Hello and welcome back to the A and B Sides podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Isaac.
And I'm Zach, and today we'll be taking a look at Gorillaz' newest album, The Song Machine Season 1, Strange Times. But before we get into that, we'll be taking a look into some recent news by looking at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees. And you'll take that off, Isaac?
Yes, so the newest inductees for the year of 2020 were announced just last week. I was super excited for this. Some of the bigger names of the last 30 to 40 years were inducted, and let's start getting into that. So the first inductees that were announced was the Depeche Mode. I really personally don't know much about them, but what I've heard and what I've looked into since the Hall of Fame inductees were announced, they seem like a very high quality band, definitely deserving of the nomination that they have achieved, which is really exciting. Now we go into the next band, the Doobie Brothers, which is a much bigger name, one that I've personally loved for a long time. They were super influential in the genre that they inhabited back in the day. Super cool what they used to do, and super cool that they got inducted. Really exciting, something that I was really looking forward to, hoping it would be in the next few years. Glad it was this year. The next one was Whitney Houston. Obviously, iconic songs written by Whitney Houston, performed one of the best vocalists of all time, cannot be denied. Whitney Houston, definitely deserving, can't say anything bad about her. The next one, possibly my favorite group, the one that I was most excited for, 9 Inch Nails, finally makes it into the Hall of Fame. Really exciting. And if you've noticed, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's not just rock and roll. It's all music. And this is one of my favorite groups. Really alternative back in the day. Really innovated the sound of the synthesizer. Really was just great. I can't say more good things about 9 Inch Nails. If you haven't heard them before, give them a listen. And the next inductee, Notorious B.I.G., one of the greatest rap artists of all time, really shaped the 90s. Him and Tupac were really the main leads in the 90s. And, an untimely death for him. Rest in peace, Biggie, but he definitely deserved it. His catalog was fantastic, holds up to today's standards, and definitely one that deserved it. And finally, they inducted T-Rex, a smaller, lesser-known band, but still absolutely iconic. I've heard some of their stuff, not my favorite, but definitely deserving of the title of Hall of Fame inductee. Really great class this year. I can't say anything bad about any of them.
And now a little bit about Gorillaz and a little about their background before we really get into the album. Gorillaz was made by David Albar, and it was kind of like a passion project before he really came out as an artist, before he really got super popular. And in each of the albums, he builds upon like 4 characters, which is Noodle, 2D, Murdoch, and Russell, and they each go on like a story or like a journey, each unique to their own little albums, and I think that's just super cool. But now getting into the albums, I'll have to pawn it off to Isaac over here.
Yes, so Gorillaz really has an interesting catalog. They've been through a lot of different things throughout their history. Starting off at the very beginning, in the early 2000s, they came out with their first self-titled album with the lead single Clint Eastwood, which still stands to be one of Gorillaz' most all-time popular songs, because at the time this song blew people's minds and everyone was anticipating this album greatly. The album came out, and obviously back in 2001 there weren't digital downloads of the album, so people couldn't just listen to it to figure out if they liked it or not. People went out and bought vinyl records, they bought CDs, they bought all different types of this album, and they hated it. Absolutely hated it. Everyone despised this album because they thought it would be something like Clint Eastwood, and it was nothing like that. And over time, people came back to that album and really embraced it for what it was, which it is a great album in my opinion. Not one of their best, but still good. But man, people really did not like it at the time. You would go by used music shops and just tons of these albums would be out in the front window begging people to buy them back. Really missing their catalog. But then 4 years later, they came out with their first official big time album, Demon Days, which blew people's minds away in a positive way this time. Demon Days is fantastic, definitely one of their best albums. Came out with their most popular single ever, Feel Good Inc. Really just a great album
It was an
objectively.
insane album.
It's
Yeah.
a really good album. And they kind of took a hiatus from making new music. They came out with like a D-Sides, Demon Sides album that came out after that. They went live for that one for years, completely profiting off it. And then they finally came back to the drawing board and innovated a whole new sound that came out on their next album, Plastic Beach, which is my personal favorite album. Really fantastic. New innovative sounds again. One of the best of last decade that came out. And I really can't say anything bad about Plastic Beach. Check out those two albums if you have not heard them yet. They are must listens. So after a while of not really putting out new music, not really giving any hints as to what's next for the group, they came out with their next album, Humans, with a Z at the end, which was an alright batch of tracks. Not their best, not their most consistent, but some really good tracks here and there scattered across. And then a couple years later, they came out with the Now Now. And the Now Now is one of their more consistent track lists. The track list is just really solid all throughout. I think it's one of their better albums, but it's not on the level of a Plastic Beach or a Demon Days. Still, shouldn't go unnoted. Very fantastic album. And their whole catalog is just really high quality, always innovating, always pushing the boundaries, including their collab album they did. It came out like a little after Clint Eastwood and the self-titled project did. I'm not going to get into it too much because it is a collab album, but still, check it out. Check out their prior albums if you have not heard them. And now, let's get into the review of their new one.
Okay, and now get into the actual album, The Song Machine, Season 1, Strange Times by Gorillaz. The actual album is about 11 tracks long, and it's 45-ish minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I can just say right off the bat that it's entirely consistent all the way through.
Yes, very
But now,
consistent.
getting to the first track, Strange Times, honestly, I want to start off by saying that it just gets you right into that Gorillaz feel, that Gorillaz like whole like vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I can just say it's like really good song. But one turnoff that maybe critics of this track may feel is that it has a lot of repeating lyrics, like
Yes.
a lot of them, especially near the end of the song. Which, if you don't like a lot of repeating lyrics and you think that's just like lazy or something, you might be turned off a little bit by that.
Yeah, it is. It does get a little repetitive, but a note for this track is that it's from the perspective of the moon. Essentially, it's a really interesting track, really spacey. Got some really cool keyboard in there. I thought it was really fun. A really good way to start off the album. I can't say it has a ton of replay value on its own, but in the context of the album, very, very high quality and a good start to the album. Can't say much bad about it. It's a really interesting track, I will say. Going into the next track, The Valley of the Pagans, this one is super fun. This track is just, from the start to the end, it grabs your attention, it grabs you by the shoulders, it shakes you around and doesn't throw you out the car until the very end. It's super fun all the way through. The lyrics are fun to listen to. The sounds of the track are really fun, and the feature on this one, which by the way, every song on this one has a feature on the track list that's kind of like the little gimmick sort of the album, which I think is really cool. It brings a lot of variety to the track list. The feature on this one, Beck, really brings a good voice to the album. It really goes well with the instrumental that David Albarn created. It's really a fun one, in my opinion.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. There's really nothing much to add on to that. It's catchy, it's upbeat, and it's just like that feel good song in the album. So honestly, I can't say anything about bad about this track because I think it's just really, really good one. It's one of the higher quality ones of the whole album. But now getting into the next song, the Lost Chord. I feel like it takes a complete 180 from like the
Yes.
upbeat and like catchy nature of the Valley of the Pagans, and it's like this low down song that you can really vibe to. It's a really vibe song,
Hmm.
but it's definitely not a hype one. It's like you could not get hyped to this one. I did not see it, but what do you think about that?
I think The Lost Chord has a lot of great vocals, and Lee John, the feature on this track, Lee John blows my mind every time I listen to this track. The notes he hit on this track were just wow, blows me away. And the slow melodic music to go with the track is fantastic, unmatched. It's a really good one in my opinion. Not one you can really like play around people. It's more just one to keep to yourself and really enjoy. But it's a really good track in my opinion. It keeps up the quality of the first two songs that we mentioned. Do you agree with the quality
Oh
of
yeah,
it?
like I said at the beginning of this, the quality of this entire album stays consistent all the way through, and I think that's just a really good aspect about the album as a whole.
Hmm.
And now, getting into the next song, Pac-Man. Honestly, the feature Schoolboy Q really, really makes this song shine. I
Absolutely.
think throughout the entire song, it's really good. But as soon as you get to Schoolboy Q's parts, he has some great bars, great lyrics, and it's just simply amazing.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
I think this track is one of the best instrumentals, one of the best beats throughout the entire track list. It's really high quality and it complements Schoolboy Q perfectly. I don't think there's a better instrumental they could have made for Schoolboy Q to appear on. I love this song. It's one of my favorites on the album. I think one of the main criticisms I have is just give Schoolboy Q more time on on this track. It was great. It was fantastic, and I just wish that he had more of a role, I guess. And it was still cool. The kind of like mix on it with the vocals kind of mixing right into the track for David Albarn's voice versus when Schoolboy Q came on when his voice is much more clear cut from the instrumental. I thought that was a great juxtaposition. Really great track. And the next track, Chalk Tablet Towers featuring Saint Vincent, a little step back
I
from the
agree.
first four. It's still a high quality track. It's got some nice vocals from Saint Vincent, but I think that the overall attention grabber of this album, it's not around this. It's still a quality track. It's just not to the level of the other three. That the other four that came before this one.
I agree. I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad song, but like, it's not a very standout song. So like, it's just really kind of there. When I was re-listening to the album, I'm like, oh yeah, this song was on there, and I'm saying that because it was really forgettable. It was just kind of there, and I
Hmm.
agree. It definitely is a step back, but I think it really brings back the quality in a very big part. Get into the next song, the Pink Phantom.
Hmm.
Now, I'm just going to start off by saying that the Pink Phantom had beautiful lyrics.
Oh
It
yeah.
was just simply incredible. And
Hmm.
every single artist that was featured on this, Elton John and Black, they were both simply incredible on this, especially Elton John. I
Oh
think
yeah.
this is the most beautiful song on the album, 100%. And honestly, I can't say anything bad about this. It's just 10 out of 10. Probably one of my favorite songs on the entire album.
Yeah, and I mean, I cannot pronounce enough how good Elton John is on this track. I thought the addition of Elton John and Black was gonna be really a turn off to me, but wow, is it good. It was a really great feature from Elton John, something I haven't heard in a while, and I really enjoyed this track as well. it had a really good feeling to it. Every time I listened to it, I would just get in a better mood than I was already in, you know? It's a very good track. And it follows up with another great track, Aries. Aries featuring Peter Hook and Georgia. Wow, is this one another great track? I mean, they just keep hitting. They're not as connected as a past album like A Plastic Beach, like A Demon Days. They're not as connected, but wow, are they consistently great. And this one, I would like to say, definitely had a Nine Inch Nails, which is Nine Inch Nails vibe, which is really ironic, seeing as they just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. But wow, this is a great track. I mean, the music to it is fantastic, and I really can't say anything bad about it.
Like Isaac was saying, Aries is simply an incredible track. It's one of my personal favorites on the entire album. And it's another one of those super feels good songs, which you can see from The Valley of the Pagans. And I just want to say that the second half, especially of this song, was really incredible, especially when it got into that refrain. It's like, high tide, high tide.
Hmm.
I just thought that was just super catchy. It was super fun, and I just love this song. I just loved it.
Yes.
And I don't want to say the next song is on par with these two songs, but I still think it's super high in quality, and I still think it's super good, honestly, which is Friday the 13th. I think it's another great song. Octavian's lyrics in this is just simply incredible, and I feel like it took aspects from Octavian's rapping and his lyrics and combined it with Gorillaz beats and like vibes. And on paper, you might not think that was gonna work, but surprisingly, it works well, and it's a good song.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the best songs on here, in my opinion, but it is still a very high quality track. Really, really good track that highlights Octavian, but more highlights what Albarn is doing on this one. I think the music that Albarn brings to this track is impeccable. It is a very good background music, and it is a really good track to add in here. I think this was an absolute hit again from this absolutely hit of an album. I mean, it's just every song seems to hit, and this one hit just as well as the other one. And right as I say that, I'm going to talk about a song that didn't hit for me, ironically. Dead Butterflies featuring Kano and Aries. And I don't know what to say about this track because it just doesn't feel at all Gorillaz, you know? I think that one thing that Gorillaz has always done is made great sounding music to go with either like pretty good to great lyrics that have all or great voices, which is really different from this track because the voices on here are great, the features on here are great, but it's just a lackluster musical track. I think because the production credits actually do not go to David Albarn or anyone associated with Gorillaz. They actually go to a big time producer, and you can hear the first time I listened to this track, I was like, "Is that a producer tag?" At the beginning, and it was a producer tag. I forget which one it was. I would have to look that up, but it just was kind of a filler track, kind of just like Gorillaz. You can do better. I've heard you do better. You don't need to make a trap influenced track on a great album. You know, it just didn't live up to what I would hope would go on this album.
Honestly, same. I feel like out of all of the tracks, it is the least like good in quality. And in my notes for this song, I kind of compared it to like a chance song. Like it sounds catchy, like you think it sounds good, but after like another listen and another listen and another listen, you really start to pay attention to the lyrics. After you start to listen to the lyrics, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like the lyrics were just super weird, and if you're a guy that really like listens in to whatever the like artist is trying to get across, you would not like this song. I do not think you'd like
Yeah.
this song one bit because honestly, these rhymes, I think it was just words to make it rhyme. But honestly, yeah. Getting into the next song though, Desolate, it takes another step up in the quality. I think Desolate is another good song, honestly. It's it's catchy, it like feels good to listen to, but I will say I do not entirely like the extended version over per se the standard one because I feel like the standard one is the perfect length. And when we get into the extended one, I feel like it's just drawn out. It's like I mean, I just want to say that it gets boring near the end. I don't feel like the last minute or so really impacts the song in a positive way. Like
I kind of agree in a sense that it does seem like it's strung out longer and it's a little bit of filler, but I also think that there's a point to be given to make a great song that was a single before the album came out, and in my opinion, make it better. I think that the last minute or so that they added to the track, it did bring forward some new ideas that I don't know if it came from David or if it came from the feature of this track, but wherever it came from, it was a good addition. I think that it did enhance the track, unlike what you're saying. I think it was a good part for this track list. I think it was high quality track, and I think that the synthesizers on this one especially were fantastic. The bass was great. The sub bass was great. Not much I can say about this track that was negative. I think that the musicality of it was there, and I think that the extended version did improve the song, unlike what you said. So finally, going into the final track of the official track list, Momentary Bliss. This was a great way to end this track list. I know I said that the tracks weren't really connected in any way, that they weren't really present with each other. They were kind of all just put together into a great track list. But I think that this one, being the finishing of the album, is definitely deserved. It's definitely a good finale for the album, whereas other ones don't really fit into a role. They're kind of just there to be a good track on a good album. This one fits the role of being the finale, of being kind of the thank you for listening, the send off. It's really, really great. It does kind of bring you into a momentary bliss state where you're kind of just feeling good about everything going on. And I can't say anything bad about this track. Again, it is just a really good one.
100%. Momentary Bliss is 100% a great way to end off the album. I think it's catchy, upbeat, and just a great song overall. And honestly, if you were to ask me, I do believe it is one of the better songs of the album as a whole. But then after this, it gets into the bonus tracks, and that's about
I
four or
think there was
five
I
odd
think there was
songs.
6 tracks.
Six tracks,
Six
alright.
bonus tracks that they added. Not as high a quality as the album. We won't go into every single song just because it's not officially a part of the album. But there were some highlights on this part, I
There
think.
were 100%.
Definitely worth checking out still. It's just not as great of a... How do I put this? It's not as great of a track list as the original version would be if you had thrown these tracks on to the track list. I think that it would detriment the album, but I can't say that they're bad. They're still of high quality, just not as of high quality, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I just want to give two highlights. Two of the tracks I really did actually like. MLS, which I think out of all the bonus tracks was the best one, and also I did really like With Love to an X.
Yes.
And I also just want to say Opium. I just want to talk about that run real quick because Opium is a long song, all right? And the beginning of it is a little slow and it really just builds up, and then at that halfway point it really gets into the actual like meat of the song. But honestly, Opium, the first part is doesn't really add a lot of replay value because the first part of the song where it just builds up to the actual part of it is just kind of like a big turnoff for me and I think a lot of other listeners as well.
Yeah, and I think it does hinder the track's replay value, but I think that when you're first listening to it, the crescendos on this part of the song really, really have a lot to say about what the track is. I think it was a good track all around. I do think that the beginning was slow. It is hard to play when you're kind of just casually listening, but it is still a good track at the end of the day. I think high quality musically. We are going to give our scores and our reviews of the album. So 3, 2, 1. Looking pretty
All
similar.
right, pretty similar right there.
It looks like we agreed on a lot of things throughout this album. So I'm just going to start out with my initial listens. My first impressions of the album is that David Albarn gave some great music, some great background to what he created. I thought that the disjointed tracks were going to be a little bit more of a turnoff as I listened to it deeper, but as I listened to it more and more, I found that the distance between the tracks, as in like the separation of each track going from track to track, was different from what I had heard in the past from a Gorillaz type group, but I thought it was still good. I thought that the different tracks all had their own things that I loved for almost every track, maybe besides Dead Butterflies, but other than that, I mean, I thought every track was of high quality, always giving me good feelings to every track. It's always different, which I actually did come to enjoy a lot more than I thought I would. And I just thought it was all high quality. I can't say anything bad about this album. I thought it was just really good.
Now, this album, my initial listen, I will say I was not the biggest fan of, and this is why. This is right after I listened to this album right after I listened to Demon Days and Plastic Beach. And so when I got into this album, I listened to Strange Times, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Gorillaz feel that I know and that I've come to love. And then it gets into the rest of the songs, and I'm like, wait, this isn't Gorillaz. Where's Gorillaz?
Mm-hmm.
But after I gave it a second listen and like a third listen, I really started to see that this album isn't about Gorillaz, and that's where I was wrong, because this album is more about them collabing with other people to create something new, which is pretty incredible if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think on the initial listen, if you're looking for something specific like the Gorillaz sound, you might not like it, but after like a second listen, after a third listen, you'll come to realize like the sheer like genius of this album, like how genius this album is, and I've come to really like this album, honestly.
Absolutely. And I think the most Gorillaz thing about this album is that they're always pushing the boundaries, always creating something new. And this completely featured album, it's something new, and I really liked it. Also, something extremely Gorillaz, the bass lines on this one were always fantastic. The bass guitar was always great.
Oh yeah.
So I thought it was just always fantastic, and I think it's a great album. Definitely check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It gives our small channel a lot of motivation to keep going through with these videos that we're really enjoying making. Please check out Gorillaz if you haven't listened to them. What have you been doing all these years? You gotta listen. Fantastic stuff. Listen to Plastic Beach, listen to Demon Days, and especially listen to their new album, Season 1, Strange Times. Links to our socials down in the description. Please check those out. And other than that, have a good day.